I don't know whether I'll call this video a tour of the garden in September or whether I'll call it my Edgeworthia might be dying. I don't really know what we'll call the video, but we'll figure that out later. I'm going to show you a few really nice plants that are looking good here in the fall garden. A couple things are blooming a little early, a couple things are blooming right on time. Some of the annuals still look great. Some of them are about tired and ready to come out of the ground at this point. But something's going on with the Edgeworthia here. We've lost basically a third of it, and I'm going to cut that out. If you'll notice, I've said this before, every year these divide into three. And so you can really almost tell how old an Edgeworthia is by how many times it's got those divisions going down to the bottom. But one of the three, the very bottom, decided to die. So I don't know if I have voles. I don't know if a root girdled itself. The rest of the plant has a couple yellow leaves on it, but it's really dry right this minute. It's budded up to flower the buds are a little bigger than they should be right now because typically this thing blooms in February or March. But that happened last year as well. It looked like it was almost going to bloom in the fall, and then it stopped and held off and then bloomed at the appropriate time. So the rest of the plant looks like it's just doing normal stuff. It's a little dry outside, so it's shedding a few leaves. It's doing this normal thing, but this whole entire branch, which I'll come around and cut off in just a minute. I'll show you how I cut this off without doing any additional damage to the plant. Again, the rest of this plant may be on the way out. A couple of plants, cool plants back here. This is Silver Caress Mahonia. It's about to throw some flowers right now. Typically these will bloom in February or March, but looks like it's going to open a few here in the fall as well. So Silver Caress is similar to soft caress in that it is soft. You can grab a hold of this thing. A lot of Mahonia are really kind of tough, really prickly plants. I love the color of this thing. So that's the newest growth on it right there. But as it hardens off, it has this silver hue to it. It's really, really striking. It's gotten a little size on it pretty quickly back here. I'll probably take, they're right now kind of a single trunk, single leader going all the way to the top. As you can see, this one plant is now just, again, it's a single stalk all the way up. I'll probably cut this under the flowers in the late winter, cut it maybe a couple sections back and get it to branch out just a little bit more. And these three are just growing into one plant here. There's a variegated Osmanthus in the back here called Misty River. Beautiful variegation on this plant. It's stretching a hair. It's got sun on it in the morning for a while, but then the house is putting it into a little bit of shade later in the day, and so that's made it stretch just a bit. No big deal. But you see the new growth has that pink hue to it, and then the variegation settles into kind of an off-white or kind of creamy yellow variegation. This one is not flowering yet, and I don't expect this variegated Osmanthus to ever flower quite as much as other Osmanthus will flower. There's one back here behind Steph, if she's going to back out of here and figure out how to film the first Osmanthus in the line back here. This is kind of the king of the flowering Osmanthus here. This one's called Fudding Zoo. We left this one in a container way too long. It was actually overgrown and root bound when we got it. And then we left it in a container trying to figure out where we're going to put it. And then once we put it somewhere, then we moved it 3 times. So it really went through it. Almost just got rid of it last year, but finally it's actually looking pretty good now. And it had a lot of new growth on it toward the end of the season. And now for the first time, it's putting on a flowery show. Typically with these Osmanthus, the flowers are really on the interior of the plant. And you can see this one has some thrown out right on the end, so they're much more showy when it's in the process of flowering. I think next year this plant will finally look normal, but it was 4 years in the making. Again, if you go and buy a discount plant and then abuse it even further than it was already abused, ultimately, you can kind of take a minute to get them back in good shape. But I think next year this will just be a nice full plant, just like the other one is back there. Again, I don't think that variegated one's ever going to bloom as much. Doesn't need to bloom as much as the others. Okay, so let's cut this limb off. This is a pretty heavy, heavy limb. And if I cut it right here, just from the top, you know, has the, it will break and then it might peel and go all the way underground, you know, peel the bark off the remaining part of the tree, and that would probably potentially kill the rest of it. So I'll take and put a cut on the bottom of it, like this. This is the first cut I'll make. It's a back cut to prevent this from peeling down, and then I'll come out in front of that, you know, like this, and you'll see what I mean. Hopefully that doesn't end up hitting the camera, but as it gets to here, the weight of it will start to break it, and see it going right there. And then a lot of times it'll peel all the way down to that back cut. That one actually didn't. It's a pretty soft wood. And then my third cut, I'll come in here and make a clean cut. Since there's no weight on it, make sure your tool's clean, make sure your tool's sharp, you know, to do this. That should be good right there. We shall see. I have no idea. I've got an opportunity here for some other pieces down at the bottom to maybe take over. It needed to probably come off anyway. It was crowding the space. Ultimately, I'm going to have to limb this up a bit into a small tree anyway, where it's sitting right here. But anyway, there you go. There's the, I don't know if this is the beginning of a repair or the beginning of the end. I have no idea. We'll see in the upcoming months. When we started the open garden thing 2 years ago, it really set in motion the garden has to be peak June 20th, you know, every year. And so it set, you know, again, it set in motion, how do we make the garden perfect for that period of time, and not necessarily thinking out beyond that or before that or whatever. There's been an interesting evolution, because it's not normally the way I would garden. I would just normally garden at whatever pace I was gardening at, and, you know, wouldn't worry about, hey, how's everything going to look on this particular day. And then after that, we've pruned the annuals several times at this point, because there's a lot of vigorous growth. We have not fertilized again. I cannot express this enough. If you get this, once we've put so much compost and pine bark, and the wood chips that make up the paths in between the annuals are breaking down, and everything else that we haven't, it's on overdrive, actually. You know, we've gotten this soil to the point that these annuals in overdrive, and if they dropped off during the season, you know, I would fertilize. I'm not saying I wouldn't fertilize, but I just haven't had to at all to achieve this. It doesn't look, you know, we're here in early September, you know, your annuals, most of your annual flowers are going to have dropped off at this point. You're probably going to start taking a few things out. But, you know, as rough as some of these zinnias look, these dwarf zinnias at this point are, you know, they're thinning, or they're, you know, they're half, you know, they're thin in the middle. You know, they don't look as good as they did. But when we walk through here, you know, if we take Griffin around the block and then walk back up through the middle of this annual bed right here, things just go in every direction. All the moths and bees and everything just fly out of here. It's so wild how much life is out here. So I definitely don't want to take any of this away until we have to. But if we're ranking things, you know, at late summer and not through the eye of just June 20th, the dwarf zinnias, as great as they are, even, you know, they're better at lasting than the giant zinnias. You know, giant zinnias are beautiful, love giant zinnias. But typically here in the South with the powdery mildew, even the selections that have been picked, like Benneries, that are more powdery mildew resistant, even those by the end of summer, by September, they're out of here. And maybe you can do a second crop of them. So that there would be that. But these dwarf zinnias tend to last all season until now. And they're starting to look a little rough, but again, the pollinators are still all over them. But if I'm comparing that, you know, to the way the Vinca holds up, these new series of Vinca, this is Tattoo and Pacifica are the two series of that we use. We can start them from seed. We can also find them go to Big Bloomers and find them in 4-packs as well. Both of those series. Look how good this plant holds up over the course of the season. I mean, the plant itself looks great, you know, beyond the fact that it's flowering like crazy. You know, the plant has held up to the summer heat and to, you know, ups and downs in watering, ups and downs in heat all summer long. And so, you know, just comparing the two, you know, for which one actually outlasts, definitely these Vinca. It's so wild because for a long time, Vinca were just kind of not on my list of things to use because of some disease issues, but the breeding's unbelievable. Ageratum definitely not only holds up out here in the garden, tends to come back around in the fall and actually looks better. So that thing's actually putting on some new growth. It's not fall yet, it's still summer, but we gotten some cool nights, and you can see how that actually looks. And the
just came up from seed.
Yeah, that particular one came back from seed from last year. Alabama Sunset Coleus. If I take a photo out here and don't mention what Coleus that is, then that'll be all the comments down below. That thing is so good. We don't let our Coleus bloom during the summer months, but we let them bloom in the fall. So over the next few weeks, all of our Coleus will start to flower out here, and we'll just let it happen. This Party Lights Osmanthus, here's another Osmanthus that we've just installed this year. Sometimes, the Osmanthus fragrans and some of the others, they'll flower first year, right out of the gate, even in gallon pots, 3-gallon pots. Some of the other species, Osmanthus, can take a few years in the ground before we actually see any flowers on them. But when this one flushes out in the spring, it's just really bright pink variegation that's up in the top of it. Just gets absolutely covered in that, and then it's green the rest of the season, and all this stuff shows off, and then it'll show off when all of this is gone. The celosia that's in the garden is really still showing off as well. All the celosia is held up well. The Coleus really holds up well. The Vinca holds up well. Any ageratum that was either from seed or not holds up well. Most all of the salvia that are out here, we've got all kinds of different salvias. There's salvias that we did from seed that are just out here as annuals. Ones that are not really hardy here, like zone 9 salvias, still full bloom right now. Steph's gonna back up and show you an example of that. And then, all of the hardy perennial ones that we keep out here year over year, all looking great as well. Some of them are in the process of setting seed out here too, and some of those will be back up. The Gomphrena, which we didn't do as much Gomphrena this year as we do most years, it also is one that will last well into fall. I think our Gomphrena last year was probably still looking just as good as when we had put it in all the way into November last year, before we got a frost or a freeze. So some of these things will hold up. The series of Gerbera daisies from the Southern Living Plant Collection, and I'm not going to remember the name of them right this second as I'm talking about them, huh? Garden Jewels. I cannot recommend, if you've done Gerbera daisies in the past and you've struggled with them, this Garden Jewels series is just so good. And then look at that thing blooming in September. They're really beautiful. They come in oranges, reds, whites, and shades of that. But if you see these on the shelf anywhere, I think the foliage looks great too on that plant. So it will go through ups and down periods of blooming. But when these Garden Jewels Gerbera daisies are blooming, man, they are super showy. Those flowers almost look artificial. I mean, they almost look plastic. They're so perfect. This is the fireworks portion of the tour. This is Fireworks Gomphrena. Did these last year as well, and then this year we planted them, and I think the rabbits ate on them a little bit, and they looked like they were just never going to do anything. And then finally they grew through that and out of that, and now taking over a big giant space over here. We have to be careful with some of these annuals climbing on things. These are a bit too tall. We're trying to get them to come up and over the fence, but they've spread out beyond that and have gotten on some other permanent pieces. There's like a pomegranate right here that's being eaten by it. There's a couple of blueberry bushes over there that have been eaten by it as well. But definitely worth having. As easy as anything you will ever grow in the garden. The pollinators go crazy for these. There's a lot of moths on these. For some reason, if you come over here in the afternoon, it's just moth city over here. We have a ton of moths in this garden. I think we undervalue, I'm not saying we overvalue butterflies. Butterflies are beautiful. I mean, I understand why people want brightly colored butterflies in their garden, but we definitely undervalue moths as pollinators. They do way more pollinating overall. And so, you know, I love when we walk through that little front section over there, and the moths absolutely, you know, just start flying in every direction. There's a boulevard cypress back there in the back that Steph just showed you. Sliding up this way, this is the other fireworks. I realized I showed this goldenrod in a video the other day, and I just called it goldenrod and moved on with my day. But this is actually fireworks, is this variety. This one's become extremely popular. Rugosa, is that the species for this one? Rugoso, I can't remember. A lot of different species of Solidago. This one has been mainly obviously selected for the amount, how floriferous it actually is. It's pretty aggressive here in the garden. This is another one. This is one of our, you know, again, you get, I love all the native perennials we have here in the garden, but some of them can actually get moving pretty good. And this one each year, this is like its third year coming back, and you know, it's eating the things that are around it. So I'll have to rein this one back in a bit next year, which actually gives me the opportunity to give a few of these away. But there's some, yeah, at the open garden. If you come to the open garden next year, almost certainly this plant will be one of the giveaways for that event. We're going to keep this plant though in this space where we film these videos sometimes early in the morning, so you're not seeing the pollinator activity on this, but this is one of those top level pollinator plants, and they're important pollinator plants here at the end of the season where you've got a migration of, you know, butterflies and other things moving south. And so the flowers and the seed that these native things create, you know, help these things get south as they're going. So if you were here for the open garden, not much has actually changed in the native garden other than some things have really grown. We've actually, the things that were put over here are doing pretty well. We've got, you know, this is still 4 or 5 inches of wood chips at this point. It just hasn't broken down as fast as I would like for it to. We were, I don't know when we did this, February or March when they initially went down, and I think enough dry period happened in there where, you know, it didn't break down as much. I think when we got started over there and did this, we probably watered a little bit more that first season because new plants were going in and blah, 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 and whatever. But we have a lot of stuff. We've planted a ton of stuff in the vegetable garden, native plants that we're going to move over here in the spring. Didn't want to put them into this wood chip material. I want to let it break down a little bit more. And we've got a big holding pen back here, which is quite beautiful. It's a very striking area back here with a bunch of full flowered native perennials back there. One thing that's kind of fun right this minute is the Cephalanthus is still flowering here at the end of the season. And look at this alien flower on this thing. Isn't that wild? It's just absolutely crazy what this flower actually looks like. You see lots more to come here. I'll tell you what, I would say that all parts of this plant are undervalued. I think that even without flowers, the foliage on this plant is so striking. We're up hiking. My son Charlie and I were up hiking in the South Carolina mountains last weekend, and the Cephalanthus that was up there, the foliage looks so good in September, and you're looking at everything else and looking at tired leaves on things, but somehow, you know, the Cephalanthus still looks like this, you know, at the end of the season. It's pretty easy to pick this plant out in the wild because of how good the foliage actually looks on it and how nice the plant typically is beyond the flowers. But so this is going to sit like this through the winter time. Hopefully this stuff will continue to break down, and then in the spring all of the things that we have already gotten for this will go in. Plus I would imagine it's only September right now. We'll probably, knowing us, we will have acquired quite a few more things before then. So we're hoping this space will be very, very different next summer. It's amazing to me how year over year a view can change. You can have this spot that for 2 years is like the main photo. Like that photo is just so good every single time. Now, right now it's just kind of this angle in here. I find myself standing here more and more for the garden Q&A or whatever, but the combination of textures and colors in this space, and there's always something flowering here. Got an Encore Azalea that'll be flowering in a couple weeks. Got a camellia that'll be flowering a couple of weeks after that. Actually, this coleus, which is, you know, here for the this time of year, will be gone, but it'll flower here in the next few weeks. That rosemary will flower in the winter. That dianthus that's up front is blooming now. There's several salvias here. Some of them are a little bit later blooming. Got the blue-eyed grass that'll be blooming in the early spring. There's a soft caress Mahonia that will bloom in the winter. It's just something is always happening over here in this area now, and got camellia back here will be flowering in a few weeks. So always something different happening back here, and then even layered, you know, back here behind me. So I like this area more and more, and it's kind of funny. Again, it's kind of funny. Your garden will evolve. There'll be moments where something will just look the best it's ever looked, and then 2 years after that, you're like, I don't know what happened there. It's overgrown. Something needs to be changed in that particular photo, but something else kick in and look great. The Juliet Clera never disappoints. I think it's as good or better than it has been the entire time, and I see a vine growing up through it. As always, there's got to have a porcelain vine growing through it. But look how good this plant is. This one is in, I want to say it probably gets no more than about 3 hours of direct sun in a day. There's things that are much taller in 3 directions from it, but man, is it good. We've had a deer come over here and eat the anemones down to the ground. Did not eat the Clera, so that's probably a pretty good sign. Ate a few other things that were around here, but did not mess with this. Oh, here's a, hold on, Steph. We got look at this beautiful variegated porcelain vine. Anybody wants a variegated porcelain vine? I've got one here for you. You can root it, and then it'll probably revert back to green and take over your entire garden. We've got them. This is this our number one nemesis? Would you call it for yeah, probably overall our number one nemesis out here, because the problem is it grows up through things and gets to the top of it and is super well established before you see it, because the birds land on it and drop the seed down through the plants. That's how I think that ends up happening. But Juliet Clera, I don't think you could go wrong with this plant. So you could use this as a small screening plant. If it had a little more sun, I think it would be a little bigger at this point already. Certainly fuller. I've had to prune on it a couple times. It's cost me a little bit of height. What will happen when you put something in the shade is, same thing with this Osmanthus that's next to it. It stretched so much the first couple of years that I had to cut some of that growth off in order to fill it back out. So you'll find that you're cutting half the growth off of it every year. If it's in the full sun, that growth will tend to be fuller as the plant comes up, but I don't think you could beat this plant. If you see this plant anywhere for sale, it's so good. Again, it'll take full sun, part shade. In time, probably get 8 or 10 feet tall, you know, in a 10-year period of time. Everything's gonna get bigger than that. But I like to put things, if I'm gonna say how tall something's getting, it's gonna be in a 10-year time frame. You know, that's kind of the way that the sizes of plants probably should be said. Because if I told you this thing gets 20 feet tall, which it probably does, you're not going to buy it. But it's gonna get 20 feet tall in 30 years, and it can be controlled at 10 feet tall or 8 feet tall for that entire time. So I think the tags probably should be 8 to 10 feet in 10 years or whatever, you know, for whatever plant. And I think people could understand, you know, that would be probably a way that we should probably do the tags. But anyway, Juliet Clera, I absolutely love this plant. One plant that's just exceeded any expectation I would have possibly had of it is this Aucuba. It's Hosaba Hoshifu. We planted this as a little 1-gallon container 3 years ago, maybe, something like that. I mean, this thing was tiny. Aucubas are typically pretty slow growing. We've got several others here in the garden, and they're pretty slow. This spot stays consistently more moist. And so I put Aucuba, if I'm gonna make a dry shade video or tough shade plant video, Aucuba's gonna be in it. But when they're in the dry shade, they're definitely much slower growing plants. They're just different. But this is area, because the air conditioner is over here, putting out a little bit of consistent moisture. This is slightly lower here. The water kind of slows down and then moves around the corner of the house here. So this has been our better place to put ferns, ajuga, pretty much any shade plant that would like a little more consistent moisture. But this thing has grown from this to this. This is a pretty big version of this for only 3 years old. The variegation in this one is so good. It's got this, it's a much narrower leaf than you typically see on, you know, the spotted laurel is a common name for Japanese Aucuba, because a lot of them that are sold out on the market are spotted like this. Some of them have solid yellow plate pieces and that kind of thing, but this one's a much narrower foliage. I really like this plant. The Vitex that's above its head, I think, is going to go this winter. I think we're going to go ahead and take it down. I think we've given it enough opportunity. It's a pollinator favorite, and I think I am going to come back in here with another Vitex. I'm just not going to put one in that's kind of a sprawly one. I'm going to put one in that's a little more rigidly upright. I think will ultimately be the answer, because it's actually hurting the back of the magnolia on the other side of it. And it's up against the house all the time. It's in every direction. This thing is capable of growing 6 or 8 feet in a season, and every time I prune it, you know, I've tried to do some thinning of it up here in the canopy, and every time I prune it, it branches in 12 different directions. It causes growth all the way down through the plant and causes these crazy amount of cross branching. It's like I cannot, at most I've always said you're in charge of trees, especially when they're small, and I can make pretty much any tree, shrub or tree look like I want it to. I have definitely failed with this one. There's more crossing branches up there than I care to count. And if I cut them out today, it'll figure out how to make 9 more crossing branches for every 1 crossing branch I take out of it. It just has no, it automatically grows. It automatically grows back. So if I cut the end of a branch, now I've got all of these come out. And you say, well, you can go in there and cut this one out because it's crossing that one over there. As soon as I cut this one, I'm gonna have 7 more over here. It's just, that's how, it's whack-a-mole with this Vitex. But because of that, you know, it blooms on new growth, and because it blooms on new growth, it blooms a lot. So I highly recommend the Summertime Blues variety. I'm not knocking it. It was just the wrong plant to turn into a tree. If I had, like if you had a bank or a slope in a sunny area, and you were asking me what is a solution for covering it to get root material that would hold that bank in place, and had a plant that would draw pollinators in all season, and only require you to prune it like once a year or do maintenance on it once a year, Summertime Blues Vitex would be the top of my list. I think that's the perfect application for it. If you ask me for one that turned into a tree and then maintain it with some sort of, you know, uniformity, it ain't this plant. So that's my thing. I'm not knocking this variety. I think it's probably has a purpose. The rate of growth, the speed of growth, the sprawly habit, I think would be absolutely fit many other applications in the garden. I love putting paths through a garden because it gives you bed edges to plant things on. And if Steph backs up a hair further here, there's a coleus that was planted along the edge there, a little lower growing coleus, and it's come out on the path probably a little more than I would actually want that one. But you can see having these paths come in, you know, into the garden like this, you know, what opportunity it gives you. There's an ajuga just beyond that, and it's a slightly low area, so that ajuga is really thriving. As you go on around the corner here, we have carexes and other things. There's selaginella or club moss, a little dwarf cryptomeria here, another Aucuba that's going to out probably this the Weigela that's behind it's actually coming out. As that Aucuba gets bigger, we'll give it some space there. But in the meantime, while that thing is small, we put these Beacon Impatiens that we did from seed along the path here. We cut them off of these permanent things occasionally because these Beacon Impatiens are really, these are very good Impatiens. So again, I mentioned the Vinca in the front garden. You know, back in the 80s, we sold so many trays of Impatiens and Vinca to customers. And then, you know, downy mildew came along on the Impatiens and just basically wiped out Impatiens in gardens for a while. You know, once you might go a little while. It's like squash borers. You know, you might get away a few seasons growing squash or zucchini, and then when the squash borers come, then it's just like, well, what do? You got to spray or something in the future. So the downy mildew kind of, you know, made a big fall off in people planting Impatiens in their gardens. But these Beacon Impatiens are resistant to downy mildew, and they're so good, and you can do them from seed as well. And there's a whole color palette of them. I knew they were good. You know, I'd seen them at all the shows, but we had not done them ourselves yet from seed. But because I highly recommend these Beacon Impatiens in whatever colors. If you got a slightly, the dry shade area on the back line, they would be very stunted, but this particular area stays a little more moist but not wet. And these things, I don't know how many times they've been cut back at this point this season, 3-4 times that we've had to cut them back. The deer came along one time and ate them off, and it was almost a gift because they're so vigorous coming back. You know, they just came right back out of it. But you know, again, I can't recommend these enough. And again, it's another one you can do from seed, so you don't have to pay $9 for an annual. You know, you can if you want to, but these, you know, you can get a pack of seed and do a big strip of a space, and they came up easy from seed, transplanted easy into the ground, have not been refertilized the entire season. You would have to refertilize them if you're putting them in a new space. You know, you judge it by how it's growing. If I have to cut it back 3 or 4 times a season, there's no real reason to have to fertilize that during the growing season. So there's some things here in the garden on the Edgeworthia. I have no idea where we're going with that. We had that Miss Kim lilac die in that same area last year, which is a little concerning that, you know, 2 things right next to one another that were well-established large plants have kind of, you know, one branch at the time died back. And again, I don't know if it's a vole. I don't think it's any kind of root-borne disease issue. You know, I might, you know, go down that path later if I had to, but, you know, thinking about that, but I think it might be a vole. Or again, when you plant these plants, if they're really, really root bound, there is a possibility of a root, you know, that you didn't pull out and didn't get, you know, separated a bit, wrapping around another one and actually killing another root underground. So as time goes on, you can see some decline in your plants from that as well. I've seen that with old compacta hollies that planted on foundation plantings, you know, where they'll kind of die one branch at the time because the landscaper put them in and didn't break the root balls up at all, and they just start choking one another as the roots get bigger. Doesn't really hurt them when there's those little fine roots in the pot, but as those roots get more established, they start to kill one another under the ground. So there you go. Tell us what's looking good in your September garden wherever you are in the country. Thanks for watching.